the superheroes cometh on this episode of Did They Get It Right?
Let's do it.
I have an edited book with Ian Gordon and Mark Jankovic called Film and Comic Books, where different scholars explore different aspects from international perspectives of what it means when comic books are adopted by films, and what does it mean for the comic book industry and the film industry that they've developed such a strong, what seems to be symbiotic or mutually beneficial relationship.
Matt McAllister teaches film, video, and media studies in Penn State's College of Communications. And that symbiotic relationship that he's talking about is evident by looking at the box office receipts from the past 2 decades. In that time, the top 10 movies based on comic book heroes have grossed almost $4 billion, quite literally tons of money, which the Hulk and/or Superman could easily carry to the bank. And they, along with their superhero brothers, actually have. But what is the reason for the upturn in the number of superhero movies? Is it solely a question of money, or do other things come into play?
Starting in the 70s and 80s, you started to see a movement where Hollywood is spending a lot of resources, heavy advertising, big budgets, eventually big stars, on what used to be considered popcorn genres. Genres about monsters or genres about science fiction, and specifically genres about superhero characters. And I think comic book movies or movies based on comic books played a big role in that movement toward that kind of popcorn blockbuster.
With the release of Superman in 1978, the world saw the first superhero blockbuster, essentially the first salvo in what would be an onslaught of similar releases. Most comic books have a dearth of stories and a large fan base. Do these elements play a part in a movie executive's decision to make more of these films?
And in some ways, it's a little bit of a safe out. They can choose characters that are already well known, that are already brands in and of themselves, like the Avengers or Superman or Batman or Spider-Man. And they can say, yes, I'm willing to sign off on a $200 million budget for this kind of movie because we know that the Avengers has a track record. We know that Batman has a long track record.
Given the price tag for these movies and the rate of return needed for a movie to be a success, are there any socio-political issues that come into play when it comes to having a hit?
The very successful ones do a good job of speaking to a particular historical moment. And it might be tied to economic distress, it might be tied to political zeitgeist, it might be tied to anxieties that the culture overall is expressing. But movies that can speak to some element of that in a different way and then tie that into the spectacle, the blockbuster, I think those are the ones that tend to do really well.
So with comic books influencing Hollywood with the popcorn superhero blockbuster, is this generally a good thing or a bad thing?
Hollywood turns to comic books for other kinds of inspirations. So we have movies like American Splendor, or A History of Violence, or V for Vendetta, or Ghost World, that are a little bit smaller films that don't choose necessarily the big superhero comics, but maybe look to the graphic novels for more inspiration. And if comic books influence movies that way, you have an interesting mix of some aesthetic distinctiveness or some offbeat ideas that I think can be good for Hollywood.